Oh, baby boy, it's the Devil's Puck Luck podcast coming to you from what will, I guess, officially be declared the new DPL studios.
Yeah.
Work in progress here. Adam Armbrecht, Danny McDonough, as always, as you know. Danny did this the right way over on Twitter and just kind of threw out there, after taking some much needed time to digest the end of the Devils season, we're ready to come in and talk about it. We're going to highlight the comments from GM Fitzgerald, what that means for this team. And if we agree with the sentiment, kind of just put a little bow before looking forward to the offseason on what the Devils accomplished this year. But how have you been?
I'm good.
Yeah.
How you doing? I mean, obviously it sucks the Devils lost the second round, but I'm good otherwise. How was your move? We're in the new Devils Puck Luck studio now.
If ever there's a time to break your toe, do it before you start moving things. That's always been my mode. It's all been good, though, and things will only get better in terms of the way that we're set up and kind of how we're going to be running things throughout the offseason. And we appreciate the support that we got down the back stretch of the season because we saw a lot of good movement.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, thanks to all our followers on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all over. You guys have been awesome. And Adam and I were talking about doing this for so long, and we came in mid-season, which was even more of a difficult task. It's awesome that the Devils were great this year, obviously, but thank you guys for listening and tuning in.
Okay, the GM comes out and essentially he says, this is a good jumping off point. Mm-hmm. This team is young. The expectations are going to grow from here. Mm-hmm. And we like Lindy Ruff to be continuing to be the helm. At the high level around his sentiments on this team, is that where you land following obviously getting to the playoffs, obviously the point total, some of the individual accolades as well, and then getting a playoff series win against the division rivals, the rival Rangers?
Right. I mean, listen, you look at it like this. Lindy Ruff is up for Coach of the Year, right? How do you let go and not re-sign?
Do it by the NBA standards and just be firing guys that have won championships in the past 3-4 years.
It's so difficult, and I think that Lindy Ruff really has a hold of how he wants to help this team moving forward. I think the young core responded really, really well to Ruff. I really do. And to my point, 112 points, 53 wins, franchise record. Mm-hmm. How do you fire him? How do you let him go?
Well, okay, can I ask that question on that point? Because as someone who's been the 20-year season ticket holder, you're there at all the games. I've always been a Devils fan, but I'm ratcheting myself up. I had a hard time understanding how down the back end of the season, people were talking about Lindy Ruff like, I can't understand what he's doing. He's screwing this all up. While I can understand disagreeing with decisions or, lineup changes, rotations, whatever it may be, how are you going through a season like this where the expectations were and find yourself being that critical of the coach who is helming them to one of the best season franchise history?
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And I go to the way Mets fans really are because we're all pessimistic too, me being one of the Mets fans. But it makes no sense to me. Okay. We can always talk about like lineup changes. Maybe Luke Hughes should have been in a little earlier in the playoffs, like we spoke about. Listen, I was killing Lindy Ruff for putting Miles Wood back in that lineup in the Rangers series. I was killing him. Yeah, and it worked out well. He played well. The BMW line played well. The fourth line played well down the stretch, and he was pressing all the right buttons, the things he needed to do. Obviously, the goalie. The goalie situation. Maybe he could have done things a little bit different with who he started in certain games, but at the end of the day, this team was phenomenal. We finished third in the NHL. Lindy Ruff is a great coach. He's a veteran coach. He's an older guy that has that old school mentality. But I also think that it's great for the younger players to see and understand that old school mentality moving forward to really develop their careers.
Yeah, instill it into them at a young age, as you say. Obviously, if Danny, now he was up in the running, it was Lindy Ruff or Danny McDonough for head coach. And Danny would have been going with Blackwood for the majority of the playoffs. So that's one of those things, look behind the glass, right?
What's crazy to think about, not to cut you off, but people were actually talking about putting Blackwood in that Carolina
Was that a real thing or was that
was real?
I know that it was being talked about, but it was being talked about like it was a possibility, but everyone was reacting to it like that would be insane if they did that. Like, I want sources on that. Who was saying that it was a real possibility? Because Amanda Stein didn't come out and say, hey, there's some chance that Blackwood could be between the pipes. Like, you know what I mean? There's no one reputable attached to that. Sometimes you get caught up in that fodder. But to tie a bow on this season, how did you view this year? Because for me, and we can touch a little bit on the Hurricanes, obviously it's not the way you want that series to go. Of course. But here's the way I looked at it. You have that great regular season. You have guys developing, obviously. Jack Hughes emerging. You go to the playoffs. That's automatically already box check number one. Because we would have been happy if they played really well and missed the playoffs this year potentially. Yeah. Then you go there. You go 7 games against the Rangers. You beat the Rangers in a Game 7. You come back from 0-2 down. And then you get beat up by the Hurricanes. And that doesn't affect my opinion at all. Because what to me it looks like is I start to tear it out as, hey, guess what? The Rangers and the Devils were a little bit closer to one another in terms of where they were from a quality standpoint.
Yeah.
And the Canes were clearly a better team. That's okay. Does it change at all for you the way they performed against the Canes?
No, I'm with you 100%. And I think the Devils played their best game in Game 5, that loss. I really do. The overtime loss. They played their best game.
And that's a smart way to look at it, too, in terms of...
if they got crushed in Game 5, like it was like 6-0 Canes going away, we're sitting here, we're probably really disappointed that entire series defensively and goaltending-wise, too.
Yeah.
Because we won the one game 8-4, so it wasn't a defensive masterpiece by the Devils in any means, and giving up those 3 shorthanded goals. But no, I agree with you 100%. I think the Canes are just a phenomenal team. They have incredible depth, which you're seeing with all their injuries as well. The Stanley Cup for us, in a way, was beating the Rangers in 7 games. And I think that this team really needed that, first and foremost, to go into the following season knowing that they can develop well and they could be even better than they were this year, Yeah. And listen, I think everybody, all Devils fans out there, no one expected this to happen.
No
one expected us to be second, 1 point behind the Canes in the Metro to win that division. It's phenomenal. It's crazy to think about.
And it's why, listen, should expectations rise as you see the way a season progresses? Of course. But you still have to couch yourself in the reality of what was accomplished even beyond the wins and losses for this young team and then going forward. So we generally we agree with the assessment of the Devils GM, right? Young team, developing, moving forward, staying the course here. And then coming up here, we're going to talk about the other comment he made, which was he wants this to be the crew and the core that goes forward. How is that going to unfold here? That's what we'll discuss next on the Devils Puck Luck podcast.